really horrible environment and kind of pushed me to my limits. I was working 70, 80, 90-hour weeks trying to figure out how to wrap up the business, which was the top priority, whilst trying to deal with the media.
Everywhere I turn right now, people are collapsing, pushed beyond their limits, not enough hours in the day, stretched beyond capacity. Simon Griffiths leads the wildly successful social enterprise Who Gives a Crap, but he's a serial entrepreneur, and that's come at a cost. For the first time, Simon opens up about the very real physical and psychological toll of going too hard, too often. And this interview brings up a lot for me. I suffered through a physical burnout a few years ago that almost ended my career. Not that long ago, in the 80s perhaps, most aspiring leaders knew that a way to climb the corporate ladder was to land deals and reach revenue targets. The goal was pretty simple. If you wanted to make it in business, you needed to be profitable above all else. I mean, there really was no else. Profit was the goal. This, of course, was before we ever heard the phrase corporate responsibility. But now there's a new type of leader emerging. I'm hearing more about this thing called profit with purpose. Simon Griffiths runs one such company, Who Gives a Crap. They make toilet paper. But there's a twist. 50% of the company's profits go towards projects which give people access to clean water and toilets. Who Gives a Crap has already donated more than $10 million to sanitation projects. Simon Griffiths, tell me what profit with purpose means.
I guess it's the idea that, you make money. That's where the profit part comes in. But the reason that you're doing it is, it's bigger than just profits. It's about the purpose that comes from operating the company. So in our instance, we donate half of our profits to help build toilets and provide access to clean water. So that's the purpose part. But we can't do that if we're not profitable. So profit is the means to get to our purpose for us. But, every company's going to be a little bit different in the way that they approach that.
And how do you actually work out what is, I guess, pure profit? Is it just a case of deducting your costs from your turnover and then that's the amount that you can play with to give away?
Yeah, that's it. So we run a regular business that sells products, in our instance, toilet paper, tissues, paper towels, dream cloths, a few other bits and pieces. And that means that we have cost of goods to actually create physical products that we can sell. We have to ship them to our customers, which costs money, and then, pay people like our staff, which is really important to, look after our team. And so everything that's left over at the end of that, and then we also pay tax, which is probably another important part of the equation. Everything that's left over at the end of that, we split in half, best guess at the end of the financial year. And that's meant that typically we've donated just more than 50% of profits because we've erred on the side of being cautious at the end of financial year where we're trying to guess how much profit we've made for the year before we pay it out.
And what is a certified B corporation?
One of the fundamental clauses of the Corporations Act is that you have to be maximizing your shareholders' wealth. That is your job as a corporation. And I think people realized that, that maybe caused a few problems over the last, several decades. The global financial crisis is probably a big one. I mean, we've seen this even in Australia recently with everything that's happened, with the banks. And I think, 15, 20 years ago, there was a movement to say, well, actually, maybe as businesses, we have a responsibility that's bigger than that. And that's what B Corp is about. It's about running your business with a set of ethics and values that means that you look after your team, you look after the environment, you look after stakeholders beyond just your shareholders. And that if every business in the world did that, then I think we could end up in a very different place.
And I think you worked out pretty early that you wanted to be in business. But again, it seems like a dirty word in the 80s when you grew up.
I don't know why, but as a kid, I remember, people being like, what do you want to do when you get older? And I was like, I want to be a businessman. But yeah, being a business person in the 80s. The business people that were in the paper were the Christopher Skases of the world and the the Bonds of the world, who were in the paper for all the wrong reasons. And there wasn't actually that many people out there who were ending up in the paper for doing good things in business. And that's all changed now. Startups have been a huge kind of shift in the way that business people get represented in the press, and they're now made out like heroes, with and also villains still, but often like heroes as well as villains, when it used to be mostly villains. And so that's all shifted since I was at university. Even coming out of university in the mid 2000s, startups, that wasn't a term that really got used. And so, yeah, that's something that I think has been really positive. The idea that businesses can be seen as, or starting a business can be seen as a really positive pathway, but also can have a really positive impact on the world. And that's something that is super exciting to see change.
The idea of who gives a crap actually comes about after several trips to Southeast Asia and to India. And in fact, you ended up in India after a few issues while you're at university. What were you studying?
Yeah, so I studied economics, finance, and engineering. And so, yeah, I loved, problem solving, innovation, markets, which were kind of what all of my degrees were sort of built around. Ending up in different parts of the developing world sort of happened kind of by accident, because I grew up in Western Australia and went to university in Melbourne, and I had, very little money, but a lot of spare time. And so I realized pretty quickly that it was cheaper for me to spend all of my holidays in Southeast Asia than it was to go and see my family in Western Australia, because the flights at the time, literally cost the same, but I could get by on $25 a day in Southeast Asia.
You could eat a lot of rice.
Versus a lot more in Perth. Kind of, not really thinking about it too much. Like, I chose to spend all of my holidays in Southeast Asia and then eventually further afield. And this kind of passion for the developing world sort of crept up behind me, which was something that I hadn't really thought about until towards the end of my degree. And then I realized that actually maybe, instead of going into one of these kind of boring corporate jobs that you get funneled into at university, I should think a little bit more deeply about what it was that I truly was passionate about, and realized that, there was this interest in the developing world that I could maybe try and pursue.
So you also started to suffer from some back pain while you were at university. How did that first come about, or what happened?
I spent a summer working in an internship, and I sat down in a chair that summer that just wasn't quite comfortable. And by the end of the summer, I had, constant daily back pain, and went to the physio, went and kind of got it checked out and got some sort of temporary relief, but never really got any relief that lasted beyond, 3, 4, 5 days. And so I ended up seeing lots of different people. I'd kind of tried pretty much everything under the sun to get rid of back pain, whether it was, yoga or Pilates, Bowen therapy, like chiropractor, everything. Like you name it, I did it. And eventually, back pain just got worse and worse and worse. I was in my final 18 months of university, and basically had to stop going to class because I couldn't sit down. And so, university, you go to lectures, you sit there, you learn stuff, and then you go home and you study it and try to pass your exams.
You're sitting down still while you're doing that.
And so basically the final, the start of the final 18 months of my degree, I slowly had to stop going to class and just basically did, virtual university, studied laying down. And it was a pretty miserable existence. And so 6 months out from finishing my degree, I said, I've got to stop this. I'm not happy. I'm not going well. And now I realize my mental health wasn't in a great place, but that terminology didn't really exist back then. And I probably didn't have enough life experience to recognize it in myself. But I had to take time out to try and get my physical health better so that I could actually, have an existence that was enjoyable. And so I dropped out of uni and said, I'm going to commit some time to trying to figure out what's going on. And so I went and spent time in India in a yoga ashram where I was basically, studying under the guidance of a guru, trying to get as much kind of time in the day, kind of stretching and looking after myself as I could.
So this is all quite extreme, Simon. The pain, this is not your regular bit of a back niggle, right? So how bad did it get? I mean, to drop out of uni, to go to a yoga ashram in India, I mean, it must have been very intense.
Yeah, it was intense. Like it was, literally like 22 hours of the day. I'd probably had a couple of hours overnight where I wasn't in pain, and was taking, painkillers every day, realizing that wasn't, a viable way out. And there was something that was fundamentally like not right in my body that was causing me to be in a lot of pain. And that was a pretty horrible thing to deal with as, 22-year-olds who thought that they were about to get on with a really exciting part of their life, and sort of saw, all of the opportunities that were in front of me kind of crumble because you had to sit down to do them.
I'm really interested in your psychology at this moment. And you mentioned there that you were probably depressed, didn't know the word for it then. And anyone who's suffered chronic pain knows that, it's very quick that you start to feel quite depressed because life isn't so pleasant. But that aside, I'm wondering how much you struggled with, I'm a smart guy. I'm doing really well in economics and engineering. You come from smart parents who were, I think your dad was working at McKinsey. You were probably on the path to becoming, a really great consultant in the corporate world. And then this thing sort of stops you in your tracks and you don't have an explanation for it, a reason for it. How much did that affect your psychology?
Yeah, I mean, I think the hardest part of that whole thing was that no one could explain what was going on. And I'm someone that likes to solve problems. So if I could just figure out what the solution is, then I could start to figure out how to optimize for it, how to, get better one day at a time. But it was a complete mystery to the point where the physio would say, oh, well, you should go and enjoy a few drinks with your friends because the alcohol will help, numb the pain. But if I sat down on a bar stool and had a beer, I was in agony for hours afterwards and would have to go home and lie on a tennis ball to try and like undo whatever I'd done that was, something that no one knew what was going on. And so it was really counterintuitive, Pilates, all of the stuff that should help just made it worse. And so that was really problematic when I thought I had some certainty about what I wanted to do next and some excitement about it, but then sort of had, all of my aspirations kind of evaporate, over the course of a few months.
Yeah, I should point out at this moment that I had my own chronic pain issue a few years back with some repetitive strain injury that had come on from editing podcasts of all things and too much time at the computer. And it started out as something, just a bit of tendonitis in the wrist and quickly moved to, through my hands and in my elbows and did nerve damage and all of those things. And it brought me to my knees in a way that I've never, I've lived a pretty blessed life, haven't had to struggle too much, but this was both physically very difficult, but also it happened right at the time when my career was taking off and I was getting opportunities and I just literally couldn't do my job. I couldn't work. It's incredibly difficult to get past that. How much did your time in India sort of help you both physically but also psychologically to think there is going to be a way forward even though nobody's giving me any hope?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it didn't. Like I was going pretty deep into the list of options of things I hadn't tried to end up in like a yoga retreat in India studying under a guru like that, that's like,
I did Feldenkrais. It's pretty wacky too.
I've tried Feldenkrais, I tried
everything.
that before India. Yeah. And so, what actually happened was it kept getting worse. And I ended up finding a yoga hospital in India that used the principles of yoga to treat patients. And I was like, all right, that's kind of, like the next level up on where I am at the moment. And so I went there and it was really interesting because their way of treating this was to say, no harsh movements. And in their eyes, a harsh movement was twisting from one side to the other. I was like, this is not helping. This is not, I'm not going to get better not moving at all. That doesn't make any sense. I can't
live my life as a mummy.
No. But while I was there, and time had really slowed down at this point. It's super challenging from a mental health point of view because you can't do the basic things that you would like to do. And you see everyone else being able to do them and not having any problems. And you have this constant, it's not FOMO, it's almost like a hatred for everyone around you who finds it so easy to do the things that are impossible for you. And it's this feeling of, like, why me? And you start sort of having a lot of self-doubt around that as well. And so the interesting thing was, in this moment of kind of time slowing down, I had this kind of like almost just 15 seconds where I was sitting down in a chair, and I realized that if I really thought about what was going on in my back at that moment, I was able to stop that pain for just 10 or 15 seconds. But that was enough for me to realize that there was some sort of a link between the pain that I was experiencing and what was going on in my head. The next step was for me to go and explore that a bit further. And I realized that the one treatment that I hadn't, the one thing I hadn't tried to try and get better was this thing called Alexander technique, which is exploring the way that you use your mind to instruct your body to move. And if you can gain greater control over the way that you think about your movement and then allow the movement to occur in your body, you can start to move your body in a different way. And so I think I got really sick at this yoga hospital, like, India kind of belly sick.
Ironically, right? You're in a yoga hospital.
And was just like, I can't do this anymore. Booked the next flight out, went back to Australia and booked in for my first Alexander technique lesson. And I had 30 minutes in that lesson sitting down in a chair. It was the first time in a year and a half that I'd been pain-free for 30 minutes during the day. Once I know what a solution to a problem is, I try to optimize the hell out of it. That's kind of what, a lot of my life has been about. And so I started doing as many lessons as I could afford, realized that financially, very expensive kind of habit to need constant kind of, one-on-one training with someone. And so I worked out that the cheapest way for me to get a lot of exposure to Alexander technique was to do the teacher training course and to study to become an instructor. And the course ran for 3 years, and the final 6 months of the 3-year course was when you started working on other people. And so I did this course, was feeling better and better and better. I am now in a place where I can function like a normal person, and I can start to do the things that I really care about again. I don't want to work on anyone else. This has always been about working on me. And so I quit the course with the final 6 months to go. And everyone in the course is like, what are you doing? Like, this is the important part of the course. And I was like, well, no, I've done the important part of the course. So I'm out of here. And never looked back. And, it was like a total life-changing experience for me to find this thing that, if you go to a physio and you ask them about Alexander technique, they'll say, what is that? It's a bunch of hocus pocus. But it was the thing that, it profoundly impacted my life and had a massive, massive impact on me. And, is this misunderstood kind of, untalked about part of the human body that, one day will become very well understood because it's incredibly powerful. It's just currently in this hidden corner of the world that not many people know about.
Of course, this is changing your perspective on a whole lot of things, obviously around the pain, but I imagine this time, with a guru in India, finding yourself in this Alexander technique course, you're also thinking, am I going back to Morgan Stanley where I've been an investment banker, or am I pursuing my corporate career in consulting? Like, was that the point at which you decided there's got to be a different path for me in my career?
I think a few things happened in that final year that I was at university full time. So I had I'd been working at Morgan Stanley, as you said. I had a job offer to go to McKinsey, a consulting firm. In that year, I realized that I didn't actually enjoy working in an investment bank at all. Well, I did a little bit. I loved the challenge of, some of the more task-oriented stuff. Loved being on a deal, but hated working till 1 a.m. And realized that if I hadn't enjoyed that, and I hadn't enjoyed the engineering work I'd done before that either, was I really going to enjoy, working at a consulting firm? Would the work be that much different and that much better that I'd find this is the thing that I was passionate about? And I realized that probably wasn't the case. There was this, underlying kind of niggle in the back of my mind around social mobility and how, I was incredibly lucky to be born in a wealthy country, and that meant that the trajectory of my life was vastly different to if I'd been born in, a rural area of the developing world. And so what I realized was that be able to even have that introspective moment and to think about these things and to question what it was that I was passionate about. If we thought about all the people that would never have that opportunity, it felt like there was all of this trapped potential that existed in the world that could lead to, the next Albert Einstein, but that person would never be able to be, to become Albert Einstein because they were, struggling to get access to basic sanitation and safe shelter and food. And those things were way more important than thinking about what they were truly passionate about. If I could start to unlock that for some people and give them, the opportunity to get a foot up on the economic ladder and move forward, then I could play a role in unlocking this potential in other people and in the billions of people that, currently wouldn't be able to access it.
So you've finished your degree, you've been to India, you've had this chronic pain issue, you then offered this well-paid, nice kind of safe job, you turn it down and you head to South Africa.
And so, I went to South Africa, worked with a nonprofit that was working on an education-based project. Immediately, was like, this is amazing, love the outcome of the work here, but realized pretty quickly that, the way that we were going about solving the problem wasn't hugely scalable, would never be able to impact more than a few thousand people. And education is a problem that affects, almost 1 billion people when you look at adult literacy, for example. So would never be able to put a serious dent in the problem. And on top of that, realized that, the work I was doing, it didn't make sense for my skills and what I was really interested in. And so I started thinking about how do I use my skills to solve these sorts of problems and achieve these sorts of outcomes in a way that is scalable, and realized that I could apply my skills to build businesses in Australia and in other parts of the developed world, but use the profits from those businesses to funnel back into creating social outcomes.
How crucial was that to sort of the eventual concept that became Who Gives a Crap? Like, was it really that time thinking there's a philanthropic sort of small scale way to do it, or we can do it in a different way where we are really driving profits and that makes it more scalable and we can tip that back in? Like, did that penny drop in South Africa?
Yeah, the penny dropped. It's a little bit different to that though. The penny dropped in that, philanthropy does a good job. The philanthropy market, it's efficient in many ways. The challenge though is to get, to solve these massive problems that we have, you need way more capital flowing into the solutions than what we have available in the philanthropy market. But what I realized is that the philanthropy market is great. Let's leave it where it is and instead tap into the trillions of dollars that change hands in the economy from the exchange of goods and services. And if we can skim just a little bit out of those, trillions of dollars, then we've got a new market, a new way of funneling funds into some of these solutions that is much, much more scalable. And so that's what I wanted to try and bring to life.
I'm Kelly Reardon and this is Curveball, and my guest is the CEO of the toilet paper company Who Gives a Crap, Simon Griffiths. And Simon's journey takes him from crippling chronic pain to a yoga retreat in India, several trips to Asia, a brief time working as an investment banker. And shortly you'll find out how many more flops and failures Simon would endure before landing on his life's purpose. From Dead Set Studios, this is Curveball, a podcast where leaders take us through their ups and downs, these tough moments they couldn't see coming. Simon Griffiths, you arrive home from Africa and you're wondering, what can I do? And I'm wondering how exactly that leads you to open a bar in the centre of Melbourne. And I mean, I kind of get that because, we've all sat around with our friends and gone, we should open a bar. Like, that would be really cool. But you actually went through with it.
Yeah, so before I left to South Africa, one of my university friends had just spent a little bit of time volunteering in East Africa, and she came back and had this moment while she was there where she was sitting on a beach in like a chair with three, a leg broken off, like a plastic chair, drinking a warm beer, thinking, how good is this moment? And had this idea of what if we could import that moment into Melbourne, where we have a thriving bar scene, sell different beers and wines from all over the developing world, and use 100% of the profits to fund projects in each drink's country of origin. And so when I came back, I kind of hit the ground running on, trying to figure out how to bring this to life. And so got in touch with hospitality experts to try and understand the industry, and then eventually went kind of public with the idea and used that to find the philanthropic capital that we needed to bring this nonprofit bar to life.
So it was called Shebeen. And where was your business advice coming from at that point? Because this idea that it could be a non-profit bar probably wasn't a thing, right? Did you have to explain that to people?
Yeah. So, I mean, this was, 2010 when we went public with the idea. So, the GFC was kind of still happening. And in some ways that was well timed, because it sort of showed that the way that the world had approached capitalism had kind of got us to a place where capitalism was a bit broken, and maybe we needed to rethink the model of capitalism. And so the idea of running a non-profit bar started to appeal to, contrarians who had seen the world kind of shift over the years prior.
And what were the biggest hurdles to setting that business up and running it?
So it took a long time. It took about 2 years to get the capital that we needed, maybe a little bit longer, because we were asking people to donate the money. There was no expectation of a financial return. Hopefully an awesome social return. We'd be able to donate more than, what we put into the business. But that's a difficult ask,
Yeah.
It's much
Someone
easier
can put their $1 million in that company down the road and they're going to get a return on that $1 million.
Yeah,
You're just saying, give us $1 million.
This
We're
is
not
also,
giving it back.
This is 2010. It's kind of before venture capital even really existed in Australia. Investing in businesses was not dinner party conversation in the way that it has become over the last probably 5 years or so in particular. And so it was quite a out there proposition that took a long time to get people together. I think we found about 30 individuals coming from all walks of life who contributed anywhere from $2,500 to up into the tens of thousands of dollars to try and back this crazy idea and see if we could shift the way that people consumed and people thought about capitalism. And so we tested the idea out. We ran it in the basement of a CBD building for about 4 days, selling our full range of products after we'd had a really successful run of selling our Ethiopian beer at Madame Brussels and it being one of the top selling items. The temporary, 4-day business overshot revenue projections of our business model by 100%. So it looked like we could, do even better than we'd expected. Off the back of that, we secured a lease on a CBD building in Manchester Lane. And then in February 2013, we opened what was the world's second nonprofit bar. Someone opened one in Washington, DC about 6 months before us. Amazing experience, kind of bringing it all to life and creating a physical environment that, tried to transport people back to that beach in East Africa where Zana first had the idea for Shebeen.
You talk about this being a bit of an unofficial MBA of sorts for you because things did start to unravel a little and a couple of other ideas were bubbling along in your head at the same time, which I think end up being the precursor to Who Gives a Crap. How tough did it get when you realised it wasn't going to work for Shebeen?
Yeah, so I mean, the Shebeen concept had a really good kind of initial 6 months and we made an early donation, which was awesome. Then we went into a period of mixed trade, which I think in hospitality businesses is quite common. You're trying to get, the right management team set, making sure you've got the menu right and really optimizing and trying to get to a place where everything hums. And it took us a while to try and get to that point where we were sort of break even over that period. But break even's not good enough when you're trying to donate all of your profits. And so we put in place a plan to return to profitability. And just as we started to execute on that, we discovered this quite bizarre thing that was eventually what, led to us coming completely undone. And that was the basement level band room, our very, very loud band room that we thought backed onto dirt under Flinders Lane, actually backed onto the sleeping quarters of the police station around the corner from us. And so it took a bunch of detectives 18 months to figure out where, this loud bass that was keeping them up at night had come from. And once they figured out it was us, they basically played really dirty and made life hell for us. And we fought every single one of the things that they tried to pin on us, 90-something% of them successfully. But the one thing that we couldn't fight was an 11 p.m. curfew on live music. And because of that, we couldn't book the same caliber of bands that we'd relied upon to build up the business to date. Our patron numbers then dropped, I think 15 or 20%. Our revenue dropped 20%. And all of a sudden, the business started to lose money month after month. And so after 12 months of trying to find a way out of that, advisors around us, really good hospitality, liquor licensing lawyers, and lots of, hospitality experts saying, this is okay, we'll be able to figure a way out of it. After 12 months of trying, we said, actually, there isn't a way out of this. The only thing we can do is shut the business down. And so I joke that was a really good MBA because it cost me personally about as much as an MBA in terms of how much money we lost over the last 12 months, which all came out of my pocket. But it also, taught me a lot about, peacetime, wartime, and how to rally a team when things aren't going well, and how to try to drive towards a solution with a common goal. So, a lot of kind of stuff that you would pick up in an MBA that you pay for that I learnt by having a business that ended up, going not so well.
There's a sidebar here, though, that this time is also when you meet the woman that you're going to marry. And I don't think it was smooth sailing at first. How did you meet?
Yeah, interestingly, she ran an art gallery, and it had been a non-profit art gallery. And so when some mutual friends heard that I was trying to find a real estate space for a non-profit bar and she was looking to move her non-profit gallery, they put us together and said, maybe you can, find a landlord who will be sympathetic and give you a whole building that will be a non-profit kind of building. And so we grabbed a coffee, realized that she was actually looking to run a for-profit business, so it probably didn't make sense. But yes, stayed in touch, and the rest is sort of history.
And how difficult was it though? Because as you're sort of courting and you get married and things, your business isn't going so well. That's hit. It's kind of hard to have the early part of your relationship intersect with the difficult business time. Like, what was Mel thinking about all of this?
I think, she was running her own business as well. And so we were like very much in each other's pockets, metaphorically as well as kind of financially, seeing the ins and outs of what was going on in both of our businesses. And it was a pretty amazing supportive environment because I think, what I found was the friends that I'd been to university with who ended up going to work at big corporate firms didn't really understand the challenges that I was going through in terms of trying to run, an entrepreneurial endeavor. But having someone else, by my side who was going through the same sort of stuff just made them an amazing kind of companion and gave them a lot of empathy and, also some really good experience to help me think about some of the challenging things that were going on. Yeah, I wouldn't say it was challenging. It was actually a really fun 5 years where she was kind of doing lots of amazing stuff in the art world, and then we always had a place to go for drinks afterwards.
A marriage made in heaven, hey? And so you're also thinking about this thing to do with toilets and sanitisation, and you come up with the idea of who gives a crap. But as Shebeen starts to become really difficult and you kind of lose the shirt off your back, I understand that some of the chronic pain started to reappear. Did that become quite difficult again?
No, the pain didn't come back so much, but probably the mental health challenges did. We were trying to wrap up the business in a way that was really responsible. So the first thing we did was tell our staff that we were going to close. The second thing we did was tell all of the bands that had, gigs that were booked after our closing date that we would no longer be able to host them, unfortunately, so they'd need to find another venue. And then we were going to write a media release and tell the media. After those first two conversations, the team and the bands, I went to bed that night really bummed out. We also had a 6-week-old baby at home. So there's a lot of stuff going on outside of work. Our first child, woke up the next morning at 7 a.m. from a phone call from a journalist saying, would you like to comment on the police shutting down Shebeen? I said, no, I wouldn't. I'm going to write a media release and I'll share it with you. And they said, well, if you don't comment in the next 3 hours, we're going to publish without your comment. And so in 3 hours, I had to put a statement out that, went from this journalist into another journalist's kind of article and then eventually ended up in a large newspaper. And kind of snowballed from there. And then the police and the liquor licensing PR teams got wind of it. And because what had been published didn't have full context, it was very easy for them just to put out a press release saying, we're not shutting down the business. If they're choosing to shut down, it's, for their own reasons. It's got nothing to do with us. And so then it made me look like I was not telling the full truth, which was not true. We were very open about what was going on, but kind of ended up with mud on our face. And it was a really horrible environment and kind of pushed me to my limits. I was working 70, 80, 90-hour weeks, trying to figure out how to wrap up the business, which was the top priority, whilst trying to deal with the media, because our strategy was we've got nothing to hide here. So we're going to give, the full story. Unfortunately, what happened was we gave lots of information, and all of the worst parts of that information was cherry-picked to turn a nuanced story into a story of scandal that was factually correct, in inverted commas, but actually just completely missed the point of everything that was going on.
This is so hard, right? Because you've sort of been to the brink once already in your life where, life is looking pretty grim. I'm just wondering, how you were able to address this situation, which is hugely stressful. I imagine you're not sleeping, baby's sick, your wife's sick. And I think eventually your body really does shut down.
I think what happened, I didn't realize it at the time, but, I was kind of running on less than empty at that point. After a few months, I was just saying, I need a holiday. I took a month off and I came back after a month and unfortunately just didn't feel any better. And it was the first time in my life where a holiday wasn't enough, and I realized that something wasn't right, but I just sort of had to keep on going. And I think things weren't great at home and things weren't great at work because I wasn't able to kind of process what was happening around me with a level of clarity that enabled me to react in a reasonable and responsible way all the time. And probably after, 6 or 8 months, I think we had an all-week meeting at work where we kind of brought the whole team for Who Gives a Crap together for the first time, which was an amazing experience. And I felt like I got a lot of energy from it at the time. And then I got home afterwards and collapsed into bed and I couldn't get out of bed for 4 days and ended up at the doctor saying, you're just completely exhausted and there's nothing left to give. You need to make some changes to try and get this back to normal.
And this is really interesting because you're going through this, terrible situation with Shebeen, and you've already got the signs that, you're kind of at exhaustion point, but you start building this thing called Who Gives a Crap at the same time. Many normal people, Simon, at this point would have gone, it's too much for me to build a whole nother company. I've just lost a lot of money and a lot of pride and a lot of energy and my health in Shebeen. How on earth did you keep going with Who Gives a Crap?
It was kind of the opposite for me, where I felt like if I didn't have Who Gives a Crap happening at the same time, then I would have, put all of my eggs in one basket, and that basket had been well and truly smashed. Whereas I was holding two baskets and one basket got totally smashed. And we were able to, do a pretty good job of protecting the second basket from the media kind of splashback. And so I was then, invested heavily in making sure this second basket made it to its final destination. And that for me was the light at the end of the tunnel. That was what made everything okay. And I knew that I'd lost all of this money, which I honestly didn't have. And we were just trying to financially balance everything out. But that was okay because I could see where Who Gives a Crap was going and that ultimately financially we were going to be okay. And we wouldn't have been okay if we didn't have that second basket.
So Who Gives a Crap starts taking off. People start buying toilet paper from you online. I think at one point you wanted to go into supermarkets but realised that wasn't going to work or was going to take too long. And so you sort of make almost like your second choice is to go online, but it really works for you. And then you fast forward to 2020 when all of a sudden toilet paper is the world's hottest commodity the world over, right? And just wild scenes in supermarkets. I really need to understand what it was like in your company in February and March of 2020 because the stats are phenomenal. It's something like you double your sales in 24 hours and then they're 12 times that a week later or something. Just I can't even imagine.
Even faster.
I mean, how
that
do
would
you
have been
cope with
cruisy. So interestingly, we had our second child just before all of this happened. So
of course you did, Simon.
When coronavirus hit, we had our second child was 6 weeks old at home. But at this point, I'd figured out parental leave needed to be longer than what it was the first time around.
It's 2 days instead of one, right?
Well, no, we'd increased it to 8 weeks for the secondary carer, which is what I was. So I was 6 weeks into my 8 weeks of leave. And I remember checking the sales over the last weekend of February and being like, oh, that's interesting. Our sales are up a little bit. And they're kind of high for a Saturday and Sunday. And then on the Monday, I think it was, March 1 or 2, they were up 2 times a regular day. The next day, they were up 5 times a regular day. The next day, up 12 times. And the day after that, 30 to 40 times a regular day of sales. And basically, our customers sent us viral as people started sharing, photographs of empty supermarket shelves. Our customers were saying, why are you buying toilet paper from the supermarket when you can buy it from who gives a crap, get it delivered, and look at all of the good social and environmental impact that comes from having their product. And so thousands and thousands of social media mentions that ultimately sent us viral in those first few days of March, which at our peak meant we were selling 28 rolls of toilet paper every second, which I'm fairly sure is, more than what the supermarkets can ever sell, because you just physically can't get toilet paper through the checkouts of, their 700 stores around the country that quickly.
And surely you couldn't also deliver. I mean, I think you had to stop the website at one point because you just couldn't take any more orders.
Yeah. So we sort of said, we're actually starting to sell products so fast that we can't tell how much we've got left because our systems aren't moving fast enough to be able to give us a true read on our inventory. We need to make sure that we've got product for our subscribers because we want to make sure that they never, ever have to think about buying toilet paper again. We take care of that. And our business customers who rely on us to, keep their businesses running. And so we moved our website to sold out and we set up an email sign up so people could find out when we'd be back in stock. And we thought we'd get a few thousand people signing up for that. We ended up with more than 500,000 people on that waiting list, which is mind-boggling.
I'm keen to know how you managed your staff at this time because, you just can't fling this stuff out fast enough. The whole system's going into meltdown, which means your staff are highly stressed probably and everyone's working double time. And there must be a moment for you where you're like, we got to ride this puppy because we've got a for-profit model that allows us to donate profit. So if we do this the right way, we're going to fund $20 million worth of toilets in Southeast Asia instead of 10 million.
Yep.
But you're also, coupled with that, you're also in Melbourne, Australia, which has the harshest lockdown going on at the same time. So how did you keep your staff going and keep people motivated?
I think half the team was stressed. All of our supply chain operations team were like freaking out, understandably. And the other half of the team are like our marketers and our kind of our growth and creative people were like over the moon. Like this was, like a once in a lifetime phenomenon that you just couldn't, you couldn't imagine happening. And so it was a really interesting operating environment. The thing that we realized was it was sort of like we'd been training for this moment for the 6 years prior because we are a remote first, distributed team where people are used to working from home and we do work in the office together as well. But working from home is not abnormal. Everyone does it. And we're an online toilet paper company. Like this was the moment that we'd been training for the 6 years prior. And that was sort of the mentality of our team. If we get this right and we figure out how to get toilet paper to the most people possible, this is going to result in a huge donation come end of financial year. This is our time to shine. We've got to get this right. We realized we could repack our big 48 roll boxes into smaller boxes so we could increase the number of orders we could ship. We hired and trained 25 freelancers in a week so we could triple our customer service volume. And then we set up a secret online, invitation-only version of our website. And we sent just enough emails out every day to invite just enough people through that store to take our warehouses to their maximum daily, pick and pack limits before the wheels would fall off. And we did that for about 8 weeks until we worked our way through that entire, 500,000 person wait list. And came back into stock in, June of 2020. And so come June 30, the end of the financial year, we were able to make a $5 million donation, which was kind of the cherry on top for everyone's hard work to get to that point. So just an amazing kind of outcome.
So fantastic and congratulations because, there's a lot of work. People would have seen that and, you were popping up on television stations all around the country in this amazing moment, but people don't often know the story, the 2 decades that you've spent and the blood, sweat and tears to get to that point. So that's what this show is all about. And just on that, I mean, you're still having to perform at your absolute optimum at this moment. But the other part of being a leader is that sometimes you have to put your own oxygen mask on first before you're putting it on your staff. And I'm wondering what you had learnt from all of those previous collapses that meant you didn't burn out this time and you didn't end up with adrenal fatigue or chronic pain.
Yes, I mean, there's probably a few different things going on. At this point, I'd kind of figured out after all of the kind of, mental health challenges after Shebeen that I had to be more protective of myself than what I had been in that instance, and that I couldn't put everything on the line. That's not playing a long-term game. That is not the long-term game. And so I had that realization and that sort of better self-understanding. But on top of that, I've also put a lot of time into figuring out the physical side of my health. And so the way I think about my body now is it's kind of like a machine, and I have to get the inputs really right for that machine to be running optimally. And then I can do things to check that it's running optimally over time, which is, getting the right hormone testing done by my doctor and everything else. So the inputs for me are food, sleep, and exercise are kind of the big three. And exercise for me is less about being fit and more about putting myself into a meditative state where I can kind of get the brain space and the distance from anything that I'm working on. And so having that self-awareness meant that, this time around, much, much better equipped to deal with it, but also as a leader, much better to understand that these are things that are probably important to everyone else as well. And we have to take them seriously in our business to make sure that our team can be functioning optimally as well. Everyone else's machine is not that much different to mine. These things are actually pretty important for other people too.
And how have you built that into the company, particularly at a time when, like a startup or a smaller sort of scale up, there's always so much work to do. And yes, you need to go and have a break and go for a walk, and all the research supports that. There's also just this endless list of things that need to be done. How have you balanced that within the company?
We just take a long-term view, in our business, we look at a 30-year view. We're trying to make sure everyone in the world has access to a toilet by 2050. And that is the lens that we use to apply to, all of the questions that we're asking in the business. And we take the same thing with our team. If we're trying to get to that goal, what do we need to be thinking about today in order to better position our team to enable us to get there in the future? And that is something that I think will never, ever change in our business, because that's the reason why we exist. If the sanitation problem is still there and it's going to take 30 years to solve it, then we'll still be using that lens to answer those questions in our business.
And just finally, Simon, what is next for you? Is it the case that, you've found your thing now, this wonderful profit with purpose model, and you're just going to ride it out to 2050 when hopefully you have solved a lot of the world's sanitisation problems? Is that the overall goal, or is this a company that you would like to see transition into someone else's hands?
I think, we answer that question with the same lens of how do we have the most impact? What takes us to our goal faster? And that goal is now, you've kind of asked about me personally. So that goal is there for the company. We want to make sure everyone in the world has access to a toilet, and that is the mission of our company. It's my goal to try and have the most impact individually. A lot of that impact will come from enabling the company to hit its goal. But at some point, I may not be the person that can help us get to that goal the fastest. There may be someone who's better than me. I don't think there is today, but there might be a point in time at which there is. And if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I wouldn't have said I would be the right person to be doing it today either. I didn't want to be the person that was running a 135 team member company. But with time, you learn and you get better at things. And so maybe in 5, 10, 30 years' time, it'll still be me as well. But who knows? I'd like to think that someone else eventually can take the reins and do a way better job. And so for me personally, a lot of my impact will come from Who Gives a Crap. But I also want to try to inspire other entrepreneurs to go on the crazy journey that we've been on and push the boundaries and create business models that haven't existed before. And so part of that comes through, investing and mentoring in the next generation of entrepreneurs that are coming after us and helping them to avoid some of the mistakes that we had ourselves. But maybe there'll be another crazy business idea that pops up somewhere along the way that we can execute on internally with Who Gives a Crap, or maybe it's something I look to try and do myself, outside of Who Gives a Crap as well.
Well, it's been so great to hear about the many curveballs you've faced and how you've battered them all away, and congratulations on Who Gives a Crap.
Yeah, thank you. Amazing to talk about it all.
Man, a powerful interview from Simon, which has had me thinking about my own burnout a few years ago and how I can avoid it again now that I'm running my own company. If you have a burnout story, a time when you were really collapsing under the weight of it all, I'd love you to share it with me. Were there some early warning signs? And how hard was it to get help or to really slow down? I'd love to hear how it was for you. You can email me at hello@deadsetstudios.com. And if you prefer that I wrote to you, then you can just sign up to the Curveball LinkedIn newsletter. You can find it by searching for me, Kelly Reardon, on LinkedIn. You can hear more incredible conversations with leaders about how they thrive in challenging times just by following Curveball in your favourite podcast app. And that way you won't miss an episode like this one. So you're having this amazing journalism career, you're interviewing great people, you're chasing down good stories, and then it's sort of started to unwind a little bit for you in your journalism career. What happened?
I had an experience that I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate to, where basically I found out that my pain conditions were quite different to that of my colleagues, to the point where I was being paid and treated quite differently to people at the same level doing the same job as me. I thought that when they realised there was an inequity, it would be like, oh my goodness, whoops, we'll fix it, don't stress. But the response instead was, if you don't like it, you can quit or you can take us to court.
Curveball is a production of Dead Set Studios. We're a podcast production house in Australia. This episode was produced by Grace Pashley and Rachel Fountain.